The lecture hall buzzed with excited chatter from dozens of alien species. Students from across the galaxy had gathered at the prestigious Galactic University for their favorite class, Comparative Planetary History. Today's topic was particularly intriguing: the newly discovered species called humans and their home planet Earth. Professor Zex Thara, a tall, blue-skinned Altarian with 4 arms, activated the holographic display. The image of a beautiful blue and green planet appeared, rotating slowly in the center of the room. Students from various worlds leaned forward in their specialized seats, their different forms of eyes focusing on the display. "Today we study the third planet from a yellow star," Professor Zexthera announced, her melodic voice carrying easily through the hall. "The inhabitants call it Earth, and themselves, humans. What makes this species fascinating is how recently they achieved space travel, yet they've already begun establishing colonies beyond their home system." A student with crystalline features raised one of her geometric appendages. "Professor, how old is their civilization?" "Most species take millions of years to reach interstellar capability." The professor's expression grew thoughtful. "That's what makes them so unusual, Cristal. Human civilization as we understand it has existed for only about 12,000 of their years. They achieved spaceflight in less than 100 years after discovering powered flight." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the audience. A gaseous being in a containment suit spoke through his translator. "Impossible. The Veltari took 3 million years to progress from basic tools to space travel. How could any species advance so quickly?" "An excellent question, Nebulos. Let's examine their development timeline." The hologram shifted, showing primitive humans around fires. Humans began as simple hunter-gatherers, much like most species. However, their progression shows an unusual pattern. The display moved forward through time, showing the rise of agriculture, cities, and early civilizations. The alien students watched with growing amazement as the timeline accelerated. "Notice how their technological advancement isn't steady like other species," the professor continued. "Instead, it jumps forward in bursts. These leaps often coincide with what they call wars, organized conflicts between different human groups." A young Zentarian with large, compound eyes clicked his mandibles nervously. "Wars? You mean they fought amongst themselves?" "But Professor, advanced species outgrow internal conflict early in their development. The Council of Peaceful Worlds established this as a universal truth." Professor Zexthera paused the display on an image of ancient human warriors. "That's what we all believed, Velak, but humans appear to be an exception. Not only did they fight amongst themselves, they never stopped fighting. Even as I speak, there are still conflicts happening on their planet." The classroom fell silent. This contradicted everything they knew about civilized development. Species that continued fighting internally were supposed to destroy themselves long before reaching the stars. "But how did they survive?" asked a floating, jellyfish-like student named Quirin. "Our models show that violent species either eliminate themselves or stagnate in permanent conflict. This is where humans become truly unique," the professor replied, changing the hologram to show a timeline of human conflicts. Instead of destroying themselves, their wars drove innovation. Each conflict pushed them to develop new technologies, strategies, and organizational methods. The display showed primitive clubs evolving into swords, then to gunpowder weapons, and eventually to incredibly sophisticated military technology. The progression was rapid and relentless. "Let me give you some context," Professor Zexthera continued. "The average peaceful species develops metallurgy over about 50,000 years. Humans mastered it in less than 5,000. Most species take 100,000 years to create complex governments. Humans built sophisticated political systems in under 8,000 years." A small, furry creature with large ears spoke up in a high-pitched voice. "Professor Zexthera, this doesn't make sense. How can violence lead to advancement? On Phoenix, we achieved harmony early and progressed steadily. And how long did that take?" "Little Pixie?" the professor asked gently. 2 million years to reach space," Pixie admitted quietly. "Exactly. Now I want you all to understand. I'm not suggesting violence is superior to peace, but humans demonstrate that the path to advancement can be very different from what we expect." The professor changed the display to show a map of Earth divided into different colored regions. Throughout their history, humans organized themselves into competing groups they called nations, tribes, kingdoms, and empires. These groups constantly competed for resources, territory, and dominance. This competition created what they call arms races, periods where opposing groups rapidly developed new weapons and technologies to gain advantages over their enemies. These races accelerated their technological development far beyond what peaceful cooperation alone might have achieved. The hologram showed examples: ancient siege engines, sailing ships with cannons, and early aircraft. Each innovation was clearly designed for warfare but had peaceful applications as well. Consider this example, the professor said, highlighting a primitive flying machine. Humans achieved powered flight specifically to use aircraft as weapons, yet this same technology eventually carried them to space and to other worlds. A serpentine student with scales that shifted color asked, "Professor, are you saying they reached space because of war?" "In large part, yes, Sarah. Their space program began as a competition between two major human nations. Each wanted to prove their superiority by being first to reach their moon. This rivalry drove them to accomplish in decades what other species needed centuries to achieve." The classroom buzzed with whispered conversations in dozens of alien languages. The translator systems worked overtime to keep up with the excited chatter. "I know this challenges everything we've been taught," Professor Zexthera acknowledged. "But consider the evidence. While our species spent eons in peaceful stagnation, humans compressed millions of years of development into mere millennia through constant conflict and competition. But surely they must have learned peace by now?" asked Krystal hopefully. "Once they reached space, they must have realized the futility of fighting among themselves." The professor's expression grew more serious. "I'm afraid not. Our diplomatic corps reports that humans still maintain separate nations with different governments, cultures, and interests. They've even established competing colonial claims on other worlds in their system. However," she continued, "this continued competition might explain their rapid expansion. While most species slowly, carefully expand into space over thousands of years, humans have established permanent bases on multiple worlds in less than a century after leaving their planet." "What about their military capabilities?" Velak asked nervously. "If they're still fighting among themselves, what kind of weapons have they developed?" "That," Professor Zexthera said with a slight smile, "will be our topic for next class. I'll warn you now. Their military technology will challenge many of your assumptions about civilized behavior." As students began filing out, their conversations were animated and confused. Everything they thought they knew about civilized development had been turned upside down. How could a species of warriors achieve so much? How had they not destroyed themselves? Pixie approached the professor after class, her fur standing on end with worry. "Professor, should we be concerned? If humans are so violent and technologically advanced, could they be dangerous to the galaxy?" Professor Zexthara considered the question carefully. "That's exactly what the Galactic Council is trying to determine, little one. Humans have been invited to join our peaceful alliance, but many members are nervous about admitting such a warlike species. What do you think will happen?" "I think," the professor said slowly, "that humanity will continue to surprise us all. Their next lesson will certainly surprise you. Come prepared for revelations that will challenge everything you believe about the nature of civilization itself." As the lecture hall emptied, the hologram of Earth continued to rotate slowly, its peaceful blue and green surface hiding the truth of humanity's violent rise to the stars. The lecture hall was packed tighter than usual. Word had spread throughout the university about Professor Zexthara's previous class on human history. Students who normally attended other courses had crowded in, some floating near the ceiling while others clung to the walls with specialized appendages. Professor Zexthera noticed the increased attendance with amusement. "I see our discussion of human development has generated interest beyond our regular students. Welcome, everyone." She activated the holographic display, showing the familiar image of Earth. "Today we delve deeper into human warfare and examine specific conflicts that shaped their civilization. I must warn you, some of this information may be disturbing to species accustomed to peaceful resolution." A new student, a tall being with moth-like wings, raised a delicate appendage. "Professor, I'm Lethara from the philosophy department. My colleagues are skeptical about your claims regarding human advancement through conflict. Could you provide concrete examples?" "Certainly." The hologram shifted to show ancient human civilizations. Let's begin with what humans call the Bronze Age. During this period, human tribes developed increasingly sophisticated weapons and tactics. The civilization called Rome became dominant through superior military organization. The display showed Roman legions in formation, their disciplined movements and coordinated attacks clearly visible. Romans didn't just fight, they systematized warfare. They developed engineering, logistics, and organizational structures that surpassed anything seen before on their planet. These military innovations had peaceful applications. Roman engineering built roads, aqueducts, and buildings that lasted thousands of years. Their organizational systems became the foundation for later governments and institutions. Velak the Zentorian clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. But surely that's just one example, Professor. One civilization doesn't prove a pattern. You're right to be skeptical. Let's examine multiple examples. The hologram changed to show various human conflicts throughout history. The period they call the medieval era saw constant warfare between kingdoms and empires. This drove innovations in metallurgy, chemistry, and mechanical engineering. The display showed knights in increasingly sophisticated armor, siege engines growing more complex, and castles becoming architectural marvels. Each military need sparked innovation. The desire for better swords led to advanced metallurgy. The need to break castle walls created engineering marvels that later built their great cities. But the truly remarkable period, the professor continued, began with what they call the Renaissance. Warfare became a science. Humans began systematically studying ballistics, fortification, and tactics. The hologram showed Leonardo da Vinci's war machine designs alongside his peaceful inventions. This human designed flying machines, tanks, and submarines, centuries before they could actually build them. His motivation was partly military, but his innovations influenced art, science, and engineering for generations. Sarah, the Serpentine student, shifted nervously, her scales changing to worried purple. Professor, these seem like isolated geniuses. Surely most humans weren't focused on war. Actually, warfare touched every aspect of human society. Let me show you the Napoleonic Wars. The display changed to show early 19th century Europe, with armies marching across the continent. During this period, entire human societies mobilized for war. This wasn't just soldiers fighting, it was entire civilizations competing. The results were extraordinary. The hologram showed rapid changes, improved roads and communication systems, advances in medicine and surgery, developments in manufacturing and logistics, military hospitals advancing medical knowledge, army engineers building infrastructure, naval competition driving improvements in navigation and shipbuilding. Mass production techniques developed to supply armies later revolutionized civilian manufacturing. Kryn, the jellyfish-like being, pulsed with confusion. But Professor, this still seems inefficient. Why didn't they just cooperate and share these innovations? Because cooperation without competition often leads to stagnation. The professor replied. Let me show you their industrial revolution. The hologram displayed smoking factories, steam engines, and rapidly growing cities. This transformation happened largely because different human nations competed economically and militarily. Each tried to outproduce and out-innovate the others. British textile mills supplied their empire and navy. German engineering served their military ambitions. American manufacturing supported their expansion across their continent. Competition drove innovation at an unprecedented pace. A crystalline student near the back spoke up. This is fascinating, Professor, but I'm still troubled by the violence. Surely the cost in human lives was enormous? Professor Zexthera's expression grew somber. You raise the most important point, Brixtel. Yes, the cost was tremendous. Let me show you their 20th century. The hologram changed to show the devastating conflicts humans called world wars. The images were shocking. Massive armies, powerful weapons, and destruction on a scale that made many students gasp in horror. These conflicts were unlike anything in galactic history. Entire continents became battlefields. Millions of humans died. The weapons they developed could destroy cities in seconds. The display showed atomic weapons exploding, their mushroom clouds rising into the sky. Many students recoiled in fear. How did they survive this? Whispered Pixie, her fur pale with shock. By developing technologies that allowed them to see the consequences of their actions, the professor explained. The same conflicts that created these terrible weapons also drove innovations in communication, transportation, and medicine that saved millions of lives. The hologram showed medical advances, communication satellites, and computer technology. War pushed them to develop antibiotics, surgical techniques, blood transfusions, and prosthetics. Military communication needs created global networks that connected their entire world. Their space program emerged directly from military rocket development. The same technology that could destroy cities also carried humans to the stars. Lethara fluttered her wings anxiously. Professor, this seems almost calculated. As if humans deliberately chose this path of violent innovation. Not deliberately, the professor corrected. Humans appear to be naturally competitive and aggressive, but they're also remarkably adaptive. When their conflicts threatened to destroy them completely, they found ways to channel their competitive nature differently. The display showed the Cold War period. Two superpowers competing without direct military conflict. After their most devastating war, humans realized direct conflict had become too dangerous, so they competed through proxy conflicts, space races, and technological advancement. This period produced incredible innovations: computers, satellites, nuclear power, jet aircraft, and the technology that eventually brought them to our attention. But Professor, Velak interrupted, if competition is so beneficial, why don't other species adopt this approach? Because most species find cooperation more natural than competition. Look at yourselves. You're all different species sitting peacefully in the same room, sharing knowledge. This would be difficult for early humans to achieve. Humans had to learn cooperation through necessity. Their weapons became so powerful that continued warfare threatened their survival, so they developed international organizations, treaties, and diplomatic systems. The hologram showed the United Nations, trade organizations, and international cooperation. They didn't abandon competition. They redirected it into less destructive channels: economic competition, technological races, and cultural exchange replaced direct military conflict, for the most part. What's remarkable is how quickly they made this transition, from global warfare to space exploration, in less than 50 years. Most species take millennia to make such fundamental changes. Nebulos the Gaseous being asked, "Are you suggesting we should admire human violence, Professor?" "No," she replied firmly. "I'm suggesting we should understand it. Humans represent a different path to civilization, one that's dangerous, but remarkably effective. They've compressed millions of years of development into thousands through competitive pressure. Their current technology rivals species that are millions of years older. Their expansion rate exceeds anything in galactic records. Their innovative capacity continues to surprise our analysts." The professor paused, looking around the room at dozens of alien faces, showing various expressions of confusion, fear, and fascination. But here's what I find most interesting about humans. Despite their violent history, they've begun changing. Their latest generations show increasing cooperation and peaceful problem-solving. They're learning to direct their competitive nature toward challenges like disease, environmental problems, and exploration, rather than warfare. They may represent evolution in action, a species transforming from violent competitors to peaceful collaborators, while retaining the innovative drive that brought them so far so fast. Sarah's scales had shifted to a thoughtful green. "Professor, what does this mean for the galaxy? Should we welcome them into the peaceful alliance, or maintain distance?" "That decision is above my pay grade," the professor said with a slight smile. "But consider this. Humans have already proven they can change rapidly when circumstances require it. They've gone from isolated planet-bound tribes to interstellar civilization in mere centuries. If they can make that transformation, perhaps they can make the transition to peaceful galactic citizenship as well. Their competitive drive, properly channeled, could benefit the entire galaxy. Tomorrow," she continued, "we'll examine their current military capabilities and recent diplomatic initiatives. You'll see how they're attempting to integrate with galactic civilization while maintaining their unique cultural identity. I'll warn you now. Their current technological capabilities will surprise you even more than their history has." As students filed out, their conversations were animated and thoughtful. The moth-like philosopher, Lethara, approached the professor. "I came here expecting to debunk your theories," she admitted. "Instead, I find myself reconsidering everything we thought we knew about civilization development. Humans really are unique, aren't they? Unique and potentially valuable, the professor agreed. They've shown that the path to advancement can be very different from what we expected. Perhaps diversity of approach is exactly what the galaxy needs. But Professor, Lethera asked quietly, what if they can't change? What if their violent nature is too deeply ingrained? Professor Zexthara looked out at the hologram of Earth, still rotating peacefully. Then the galaxy will face its first truly dangerous species. But I prefer to remain optimistic. Humans have surprised us before. I believe they'll surprise us again. The lecture hall was completely packed for the final class in the series. Students lined the walls, floated near the ceiling, and some had even connected remotely through the university's quantum communication system. Professor Zexthara had received messages from faculty across the galaxy requesting access to this concluding presentation. Today we examine modern human capabilities and their first interactions with galactic civilization, the professor announced as she activated the holographic display. What you'll see may challenge your assumptions about technological development and military power. The hologram showed sleek, human spacecraft, their designs unlike anything in the galactic fleet. Several students gasped at the angular, aggressive appearance of even the civilian vessels. Human technology has a distinctive characteristic, the professor began. Everything they build serves multiple purposes. Their cargo ships can be converted to military vessels. Their communication satellites carry weapons. Even their space stations are fortified. A senior Altarian student who had joined from the military academy spoke up. Professor, our intelligence reports suggest human weapons are concerning. Is this true? Let's examine their current capabilities, she replied. Remember, they achieved space travel only recently, but their military development continued even after leaving their planet. The hologram showed human weapon systems that made several students retreat to safer positions in the lecture hall. Kinetic bombardment weapons, plasma cannons, and fusion warheads were displayed with clinical precision. Their kinetic weapons use simple physics but devastating effectiveness. They accelerate metal projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. No shields in the galaxy are designed to stop weapons this primitive yet powerful. Velak's mandibles clattered nervously. Professor, those weapons could destroy our cities. Yes, they could. But here's what's interesting. Humans have voluntary restrictions on their most dangerous weapons. They call them weapons of mass destruction, and have international treaties limiting their use. Wait, interrupted Crystal, her crystalline features shifting to confused patterns. They voluntarily limit their own military power? But why? What prevents them from using these weapons? This brings us to one of humanity's most fascinating developments, the professor explained. After nearly destroying themselves, they developed what they call mutually assured destruction. The understanding that certain weapons are too dangerous to use. The display showed the complex web of human international relations, trade agreements, and military alliances. Modern humans have learned to compete without annihilating each other. They've developed sophisticated diplomatic systems, economic competition, and technological races that channel their aggressive instincts into less destructive forms. But, Professor, asked Quirin, pulsing with concern, if they're still competitive, how can we trust them in a peaceful alliance? An excellent question. Let's examine their first contact protocols. The hologram changed to show human diplomatic vessels approaching galactic border stations. When humans first encountered our border patrols, they could have attacked. Their weapons were sufficient to destroy our observation posts. Instead, they transmitted mathematical concepts, music, and art. They actively sought peaceful communication. The display showed recordings of first contact, human ambassadors learning galactic languages, participating in cultural exchanges, and following diplomatic protocols despite having no obligation to do so. Their delegation to the Galactic Council included scientists, artists, and philosophers alongside their military representatives. They came prepared for peace, but ready for war if necessary. A new voice spoke from the back of the room. Professor, I'm Ambassador Thren Doi from the Council Security Division. I've been authorized to share classified information about human capabilities for educational purposes. The room fell silent. Security Division assessments were rarely shared with students. Please proceed. Ambassador, Professor Zexthara said, recognizing the honor. The security officer activated his own holographic display. Human military technology is approximately 500 years more advanced than it should be based on their civilization's age. Their weapons can penetrate our defensive systems. Their ships are faster and more maneuverable than ours. Shocked murmurs filled the room. Several students looked toward the exits nervously. However, the ambassador continued, their diplomatic behavior has been exemplary. They've shared technological innovations freely. They've provided medical assistance to plague-affected worlds. They've offered military aid against pirate fleets, threatening trade routes. In every interaction, humans have chosen cooperation over domination, despite having the power to simply take what they wanted. Professor Zexthara nodded appreciatively. This demonstrates humanity's evolution. They've retained their technological advantages while developing peaceful instincts. But Ambassador, asked Sarah, her scales showing nervous yellow, what if they change their minds? What if they decide conquest is easier than cooperation? That's the question keeping the Council awake, the ambassador admitted. We're dealing with a species that could potentially defeat the combined galactic fleet, yet chooses to follow our laws and customs. We've run extensive psychological analyses. Humans appear to have genuine interest in peace, but they're also prepared for conflict if threatened. They're simultaneously our greatest potential ally and our most dangerous potential enemy. The moth-like philosopher Lethera fluttered her wings thoughtfully. Ambassador, have humans explained their motivations? Do we understand why they choose peace? They've been remarkably open about this, he replied. According to their diplomats, humans learned that conquest is ultimately self-defeating. They've seen empires rise and fall throughout their history. They believe cooperation and trade create more lasting prosperity than domination. Additionally, they're genuinely curious about other species. They want to learn from us, not rule us. Their scientists are fascinated by our different approaches to technology and society. Professor Zexthara added, this curiosity may be humanity's greatest strength. They're constantly adapting, learning, and improving. They've studied our diplomatic methods and improved upon them. The hologram showed human innovations in interspecies communication, universal translators, and cultural exchange programs. Humans have solved problems we didn't even know we had. Their translation technology is more accurate than anything we've developed. Their medical techniques work on species they've never encountered before. Their engineering approaches problems from angles we never considered. But what about their military? Pressed a student from the Security Academy. Are we safe with such a powerful species in our alliance? Ambassador Threndoy's expression grew serious. Their military doctrine is fascinating. They call it peace through strength, the idea that being too powerful to attack safely prevents conflicts from starting. Humans maintain the capability for devastating warfare while actively promoting peaceful resolution. Their military exists primarily as deterrent force. What's remarkable is their integration approach. Instead of demanding special status or privileges, they've requested assignment to the most dangerous patrol routes. They want to prove their commitment to galactic security by taking the highest risks. Their colony ships include representatives from multiple galactic species. They're actively promoting integration rather than human-only expansion. Pixie raised a small paw nervously. Professor, what does this mean for the future? Will humans change galactic civilization? They already have, the professor replied. Human innovations in technology, diplomacy, and social organization are spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that have remained unchanged for millions of years are adopting human methods, but they're also learning from us. Human culture is becoming more diverse and peaceful through interaction with other species. It's mutual evolution. We're all changing. The hologram showed joint projects, human-alien research stations, mixed species colonies, and collaborative exploration missions. Humans represent something new in galactic history, Professor Zexthara continued. They're a species that developed through conflict but chose peace. They're powerful enough to dominate but prefer to cooperate. They're advancing rapidly while maintaining stability. Most importantly, they're proving that there are multiple paths to civilization. Their competitive, innovative approach complements our peaceful, stable methods. Ambassador Threndoy added, the Council's current position is cautious optimism. Humans will be granted full membership in the Galactic Alliance, but with monitoring protocols. We're betting that their commitment to peace is genuine. It's a calculated risk, but one worth taking. Human capabilities could help us explore dangerous regions, defend against external threats, and solve problems that have challenged us for millennia. A student who had remained silent throughout the series finally spoke. Professor, do you believe humans will remain peaceful? I believe humans will continue to evolve, she replied thoughtfully. They've changed dramatically in just a few generations. They went from tribal warfare to global cooperation to interstellar diplomacy in mere centuries. Their history shows they're remarkably adaptable. When their old methods become destructive, they develop new ones. They've already proven they can change when necessary. Will they remain peaceful? I don't know. But I believe they'll remain rational. And rational beings eventually choose cooperation over conflict when the benefits are clear. The hologram returned to the peaceful image of Earth, now showing human ships departing for various parts of the galaxy. In conclusion, Professor Zexthara said, humans represent both the greatest opportunity and the greatest challenge in galactic history. They've compressed millions of years of development into thousands through competitive innovation. They've proven that advancement doesn't require peaceful stagnation. Their approach, competitive but cooperative, innovative but stable, powerful but peaceful, may be exactly what the galaxy needs. They're showing us that civilization can take many forms. Perhaps diversity of approach is more valuable than uniformity of method. As students began filing out, their conversations were intense and thoughtful. The series had challenged everything they thought they knew about civilized development. Lethara approached the professor one final time. Professor, I came to these lectures as a skeptic. I leave as, I'm not sure what I am now. Humans have changed how I think about civilization itself. That's exactly the point, Professor Zexthara replied. Humans force us to reconsider our assumptions. They prove that the path to the stars can be very different from what we expected. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen. But it's certainly going to be interesting. Ambassador Threndoy lingered after the other students left. Professor, unofficial question. Do you really believe they can be trusted? She looked at the hologram of Earth one final time before shutting it down. Ambassador, I believe humans are exactly what they appear to be. A young, powerful, rapidly evolving species trying to find their place in a peaceful galaxy. They could destroy us all if they chose. Instead, they're choosing to build something better. I find that hopeful. The question isn't whether we can trust them. The question is whether we're wise enough to help them become the species they're trying to be. As the lecture hall emptied, the ambassador's report would eventually reach the highest levels of galactic government. Humans represent manageable risk with extraordinary potential. Recommend full integration with continued monitoring. The age of humanity and galactic civilization was about to begin.